Well, hey, good morning, everybody, and welcome to another episode of The Unlocked Show. I'm your host, Tracy Wilson. And in today's episode, being a Friday, first Friday back in a long time for me, finished the Friday episodes just before Christmas. So we're getting stuck back into our Friday sessions as well as our Wednesdays. Wednesdays, as you know, we have guests on board. Fridays, I go solo. And on my solo shows, I'm going to be giving you guys tips, tools, and a bunch of resources that will really help you to grow your business in 2022. So whether whether we're thinking about creating our own podcast or our own show like I'm doing right now, or growing your online business, Friday is the day you want to tune in, because that's the day I'm going to be giving you all of the tips and tools and resources that you can use to help grow your online business in 2022. Now, today's topic, what I wanted to talk about was some etiquette for either being a host for your own live show or a podcast host, or even being a guest. There's some very specific etiquette that we want to make sure that we abide by. Just being, really courteous human beings when it comes to either being a host or being a guest on a show. So firstly, what I want to say is I am a huge advocate, as you guys know, of doing your own live show. I just think it brings a whole different dimension to what you're doing, as opposed to just hearing somebody's voice on a podcast. Of course, I take my live show and I turn that also into a podcast. So it's kind of like a double whammy for me. So like I said, I'm a huge advocate of doing it as a live show, because there are so many different things that you can do and utilize your live show for. So firstly, I want to talk about, this etiquette, because, doing your own live show or creating your own podcast, it's no easy feat. It's often difficult to do. For the most part, most people who actually start in this industry, who actually start their own live show, most never ever get past 10 shows. In fact, statistically, according to big podcasting platforms, they say that only 6% of people actually get to the point where they are doing more than 10 shows. So that being the case, that really does give those of you who want to start your own show or podcast, who are willing to stick at it and are really committed to the cause, a massive opportunity, because there are very, very few people that actually stick at it. And what you'll find is, as you continue to do it, you get to your 10th episode, your 20th, so on and so forth. Like me now, I don't even know, I've lost track. I think I'm up to over 150 shows. You really do start to gather momentum, start to gather, some followers, people start to download your stuff, and they become, really avid followers of what you speak about. So saying that, you are most likely going to want to, at some point, either have guests on your show, whether it be a live show or a podcast, or you're going to want to be a guest on somebody else's show and podcast. And I'll do a whole other show on the benefits of doing that, and why you should, firstly, create your own show, and secondly, why you should really step up and be a guest on other people's shows. I'll cover that in another episode. Maybe that's covered next week. But today I wanted to talk about some etiquette. There's like this etiquette 101, the basics of being a show host and or a guest on a show. These are really important things. And after doing 150 shows and interviewing loads and loads of people, these are the things that have become extremely important on both sides of the coin. So let's just start with number one. Number one is, you must take it seriously. If you want your listeners to take you seriously, then you need to show up and do your show and or podcast, and do it with a level of seriousness. You want to be committed to it. You want to do it with intention. You want to make sure that you are delivering real value to your audience. But taking it seriously actually means that you need to show up. It means that you need to be doing it on the regular. So not being a fly-by-nighter and doing it kind of when you feel like it, because whenever we take something serious, well, we do it on a regular basis. So make sure you get it into your schedule and it happens. And I would recommend that you do it every single week. If not, like me, twice a week, which gives you some really good momentum and the ability to be able to share your knowledge, your information, and your experience really easily.
Okay, the second thing I'm going to have on my list is honoring your guests. So if you're a show host, you want to make sure that you really give the guests that you have on your show your full attention. You want to be present with them, not kind of off away with the fairies. I wouldn't recommend that you script out any questions. You might prepare for a show. You might have some bullet points that you would like to cover, but be present, because when you're present with that guest, it means that you're able to listen intently and you can then lead your next question from whatever it is that that person has said. And it just makes for a really nice flowing show rather than it being a little bit disjointed and feeling a bit manufactured, so to speak. So you just want to make sure that you honor that guest, give them your time, give them your presence, pay attention just as you would as if they were in front of you. So you're going to pretend that they are just across the desk from you, even though you might be interviewing them across the world. They're on the screen with you. You want to look at them through the screen, of course. You also want to, really, as I mentioned, really listen intently, and you want to edify them. So prepare, do your research, make sure you know something about them so that you can introduce them and edify them in a way that makes them sound really good, so that your listeners want to listen and are prepared to listen to what your guest has to say. Believe me when I say that your listeners are going to take a lot from what you say and how you introduce your guests. So make sure that you give them the respect and the attention that they deserve. Equally, on the flip side, as a guest, you want to make sure that you really respect the host, right? So you're doing the same thing. You're listening, you're paying attention, you're answering the questions, you're being really open with your answers, and you really try and find this happy medium between you and the host, so that you guys can the two of you can really find a nice place to I'm going to say jive together, so that again you've got some sort of synergy and some connection together. Again, that makes for a really good show. If you turn up as a guest and you're a little bit hostile and you're not prepared to share, and you're being yeah, defensive with things, it doesn't always make for a great show, unless, of course, the show is a controversial type of show and the viewership is looking for some form of confrontation. If that's the type of show you've got, then of course that's the sort of show that you would create. But in the main, most people want to have, a show where they are in alignment and they have some synergy and there's some really good energy between the host and the guest. So, really respect the host and just understand and know that as a guest on a show, it is really an honor, and realizing that the show host goes to a lot of effort to put their show together. There's a lot of work that they do behind the scenes, not only to promote you, but to prepare their show, to make sure that everything is branded nicely, good sound, and all those sorts of things are all really important aspects. So you want to make sure that you do that. The next thing I would say in the whole scheme of etiquette is be on time. And this is really, really important if you are doing a live show. So like the Unlocked show where I go live, twice a week, it's a challenge to make sure that guests actually show up on time. So please be respectful of your host. Make sure that you show up on time. Usually they have scheduled out to make sure that they're able to do the show at that time. They've usually done some form of a promotion about it, and they've got guests that have got viewers that are waiting to listen to that show at a specific time. So if you're attending as a guest on a live show, being prompt is paramount. If you don't, it means that the guest sometimes that the host has to go on without you, and you don't want that to happen, or you have to jump in at the last minute and you'll be a bit flustered. Equally, on the flip side, as the host, you want to respect your guest time. They have scheduled in time. They've rearranged their life to be on your show, and the fact that you've got them on there, I would say that you've done a bit of research. There's somebody that you want to have on your show. Respect their time too. Show up on time, and in an ideal world, you guys would show up 10 to 15 minutes before your show either goes live or before your recording time. That really gives you time to be able to check all the tech. It also gives you time to build a connection and just have a bit of a chat and talk about some different things, because what you might find is in that pre-show time, the time that you're just chatting behind the scenes, you might find that there's some really good content that you go, oh my God, I didn't have that on, the show plan, but I think we should really go down that path. So let's talk about that. You'll find that you'll get some really good information and build a really great connection if you turn up beforehand. Nothing worse than a guest turning up 2 minutes, a minute before the show goes live, and they're flustered and you're flustered trying to get everything organized. The other thing I would say that you would want to do when you have a guest show up early, it really does give you time, like I said, to build a connection, but also to relax the nerves, to use, some tools to ensure that they're actually aligned on your screen correctly. I'm going to pop something up on my screen right now for those of you that are watching this live as video. I often use this, and this is just a little bit different. It allows them to get organized and their seating right and get them inside of the frame, so that I know that when I put the show live, or I create the show live, that they're actually aligned on the screen in the right manner. So I get them to kind of move around and put this hat on. So it's just a little bit of fun. So you can make it fun, and make it so that your guest feels really, really comfortable when they get there. And of course, you can give them the rundown on how the show works. So because I'm doing a live show, I need to tell people things like, when we're going to go live, what's actually going to happen, what we're going to talk about during the show, what platforms are we going to be streaming across. There's a whole raft of different things that I make sure I share with any of my guests before we go live. And the feedback that I get from all guests is, wow, this is like, I've never been to a podcast or to a show before where the host has been so thorough in sharing with me what's actually going to happen. Really, really important that we do that. And it just helps settle the nerves, and it helps to prepare your guest for your show. You also want to make sure that, when you're showing up, that you actually have pride in what you do. You dress for the occasion. You make sure that your background is nice. If you have to, and for some people, they might be doing their podcast or their show in their closet, in their wardrobe. That's totally okay. But just make sure that the view on the screen, particularly if you're doing a video type show, that what people can see is not distracting, that you've made your environment conducive to what you are creating. You want to make sure you get good sound, so utilizing good microphone, headset if you need to, as I use, good camera, etc., etc. So equipment, and making sure that you have absolute pride in what it is that you are doing. And like I mentioned, before you record, you want to have a little bit of a chat. And you also want to ask them, this is something I want to make sure I mention, is you want to ask them, is there anything that they want to share with you before you do go live? Or is there anything that they need? And the other thing that you want to ask them is time. So whenever I book in a guest for a show, I always make sure that I am booking people. Usually on my show, people are booked 6 months in advance. You actually can't get on the Unlock show now for about 6 months. I'm always booking that far in advance. And that's because I'm getting people message me on the regular now to see if they can get a guest spot and being pitched to be on the show. But that being said, we want to make sure that you're booking them in at a specific time. You're following up to make sure that they remember and they know that they're to be a guest on at a particular date and time. And that when you get them on behind the scenes, you're actually just double checking with them the amount of time that they have in that day. Nothing worse than, you having an hour-long show and your guest actually only has 15, 20, 30 minutes to be on your show. If you don't check that, what you're going to find is your guest is going to get flustered. They're going to try and race through all of the questions, and you're not really going to get a really good, balanced show is what I'm going to say. So just make sure that you respect their time. You ask them at the outset, or you let them know how much time you allocate for the show. And then when they get on, You just want to remind them and ask them how much time they have for that day. And then the last thing I'm going to say on this particular topic of etiquette is make sure that you lead with value. So if you're a show host, you always want to have your audience in mind. Equally, if you are the guest, have the audience in mind. We are here for the benefit of our audience. So what is it that our audience wants to know? What is it that's going to help them get some form of transformational change in their life? Can we help them do something better, faster, etc.? And is there some tools or resources that you can give them, again, that will make their life easier? All these things are really going to help build you out a really solid show that people are going to want to show up for time and time and time again. And of course, like I mentioned, we want to focus on that audience. We want to make sure that we're continuously leading with value. When you do all of these things, you are going to find that it's going to be much, much easier for you to stay focused and to create something that is really valuable for your listeners, and also something that you're going to want to show up for and going to want to continue to do. I was in another podcasting group a little bit earlier, this morning actually, and I was reading some of the comments in there, and one guy was saying, gosh, I'm just really not sure what to do, because I started a podcast. I started out with, 20 or 30 downloads and viewers on my show and podcast. And then over time, my viewership just started to dwindle. And I have really started questioning whether or not it's worth my while doing this. Now, what I would say to that is that right at the outset, whenever I get somebody who comes to me who wants some help in creating their podcast or their show, we go through a series of questions, because it's really important that you're actually creating something that you are also going to enjoy. So yes, we keep our audience in mind, but you are the person that needs to show up on the regular, week after week or day after day, to deliver that value. And if you don't feel it, and if you're not taking it serious, you're not doing it for the right reasons. Maybe you're trying to do it because you've heard that podcasting or doing a live show can make me some money, so I'm going to get in there and get out real quick. Those are some of the maybe the wrong reasons to start your own podcast or show. And those are the reasons why people peter out and don't end up doing, 150, 200, 500 odd shows. And they don't give themselves enough time to be able to build up a viewership, because people want to know that they can trust you and rely on you to show up on the regular. So what I would say is, right from the outset, make sure you're doing it for the right reasons, that you actually enjoy doing it, that you want to do it, because in the early stages of podcasting, it's a bit of a labor of love. And then over time, as time goes on, you can absolutely start to monetize it. And there's a lot of strategies that both myself and Vicky Helm use to help our students monetize their live shows. And a lot of that information we actually share with you through our private Facebook group, which is absolutely free. So if you want to learn more about how to create your own live show, how to become a really awesome host, how to be the host of some amazing guests on your show, how to deck it all out with all the right things, and then get yourself listed in all of the major podcast platforms, then I would recommend that you head on over to freedomseekersway.com/LSLA. And I'll put this in the show notes so that you guys can head on over there. You can join. There's a 14-day free challenge that we take you through, which helps you to launch your very own show. So we talk you through some things that you need to do to get yourself up and running. And then if you so wish to, of course, you can join us in some of our premium programs. But that particular program is absolutely free and you can get started today. So there you go, guys. Those are some of the things that I think are extremely important, are the things that we need to take on board as far as live show and podcasting etiquette. And of course, you want to make sure you look down the barrel of that camera, particularly when you are doing a live show like I am today. You got to remember that your audience is on the other side, and you want to treat it as if you are speaking directly to them, like I am with you guys right now. So that being said, I'm going to say thanks very much for joining me today. Join me again for another episode of The Unlocked Show on Wednesday, where I'll have another superstar guest. And next Friday, we'll be talking through some more things with regards to live shows, podcasting, and creating your own online business. So until then, go ahead, live your life unlocked, because as you know, there is just no other way. Thanks for watching and tuning in. I'll see you guys again next week. Bye for now.